Welcome to Westmoreland Community Connections, a look at issues and happenings on Classic Hits 107.1 WHJB. Here now is your host, Chad Amond, President and CEO of the Westmoreland County Chamber of Commerce.
Hello and welcome to Westmoreland Community Connections. I'm your host, President of the Westmoreland County Chamber of Commerce, Chad Amond. We are delighted this morning to have with us two guests that are making an impact in our community. They are making an impact in our community on a subject that many listeners might not have realized this is something that is necessary to be so impactful, but I assure you that it certainly is. Welcome to the show, Valerie Hoegel. She is president and founder of HOSPAWS. Valerie, welcome to the show. Thanks for being on.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
It's great to have you on the show, and I want to welcome also Fran Petras. Fran is a volunteer with HOSPAWS. Fran, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, and thank you for having us.
So, Valerie, tell us a little bit about what HOSPAWS does, and your background and how you started the organization.
Well, my background is I volunteered in a local animal shelter and had seen the need of animals that were being surrendered to the shelter when people just really needed temporary care for their pets while they were hospitalized, having surgery, whatever the case may be. I started HOSPAWS in 2014 when I seen this need and went home and I talked to my kids, actually, and we started HOSPAWS.
Okay. And HOSPAWS, I guess the name itself of the organization, HOSPAWS, kind of makes you think of hospice, right? HOSPAWS. Is there a connection to the hospice world?
Yes, there actually, when we started, that's what the intentions were. We thought this was going to be to help hospice patients. However, we found out shortly after we started that the need was much greater than just hospice patients, that there were so many people out there that had no family to take care of their pets. Well, they were just hospitalized, so we just kind of made it a little bigger and went on from there. So,
your experience in the animal shelter world, where you were volunteering, you understood that there were maybe grandma or grandpa or somebody that's living alone that just didn't have somebody to take care of their pet. You understood that this is a need for the community, and that's how HOSPAWS was started. Give the listeners some examples of what exactly HOSPAWS does. I mean, do you take the animal in? Do you go to the house? How does that all work?
Well, depending on the situation, we do foster care. We also do in-home care, which is where we have volunteers go into the home and take care of the pets for them while they're in the hospital. On dogs, we try to get over at least 4 times a day. And it all depends on volunteers in the area. And
how does that work? How does somebody? There's a listener out there right now that they're saying, "Wow, Grandma's going in for hip surgery next weekend, and we had no idea how we were going to take care of this dog." How do they get in touch with HOSPAWS?
Most of the time, the social workers from the hospital will call. However, if it's somebody something's coming up and they're aware of that, the family will call, the patient will call, but they can always contact us. Our number is 724-787-7304. If we don't answer, please leave a message.
And you obviously have a Facebook page as well, so there's probably a way to get in contact with you with that as well.
Correct. We do have a Facebook page, and you can always message us also on Facebook. Then any of the volunteers can get that and contact you back for some more information.
Fran, you are a volunteer with the organization, and I would like to hear from you. What is the experience on the front line? How does it work?
Well, it works, for example, when Val gets a case and you have time, you can volunteer. You go to the house and you take care of the pets. But you also interact sometimes when the person comes back. You are able to talk to them, and sometimes you form a bond with those people, so they later become part of your family and your friend, and we do check on them from time to time. And sometimes they just call, especially around the holidays, just to wish you happy holidays. Yeah.
Now, we're talking about some of the folks that are in the hospital or they're in long-term care. What happens when we used the example that grandma goes and gets hip surgery, and now she has a dog that she has to walk, but she's not ready to go on a full walk for the dog. Does HOSPAWS play a role in that as well?
Yes, we still try to provide some care. Of course, it's all based on the availability that we have with the fosters.
And how long is the care that you'll provide? I mean, I can't imagine that it can go on forever, right? I mean, you have to put some sort of a parameter around it.
Right. Initially, we try to limit it to like 12 weeks. But there are some cases where maybe you have to go over after that time period once a week or something just to check on and make sure the dog's okay. And
you're listening to Westmoreland Community Connections. We're talking with Fran Petras. Fran is a volunteer with HOSPAWS, that is an organization that serves residents of Westmoreland County and beyond, right? Valerie, you said you serve some of all of southwestern Pennsylvania. Valerie is the president and founder of HOSPAWS. What is the full service area?
Well, we started out in Westmoreland County and really thought that was the only place we were going to be. That we started with the VA hospital in Pittsburgh. We work a lot with them. Forbes. A lot of the hospitals in Allegheny County also contact us. So we go wherever we're needed as long as we have volunteers to do it.
Right. And how many volunteers do you have?
We currently have 30 to 40 active volunteers. And when I say volunteers, that's anybody that can do fostering at their home, do in-home care, do event planning, or do transports for us, because a lot of times the people we deal with may not have a way to get their pet to us, or if they need help getting their pet to the vet, we have people who just do transports.
So those volunteers that are the foster volunteers, obviously they're bringing those pets into their own home, and basically like a foster parent, they're parenting that pet for up to 12 weeks.
Correct. Yes.
And so I guess one of the questions that I would have is probably a lot of listeners in my mind, I was thinking, oh, this is probably just for cats and dogs. But before the recording, you were saying that you had a guinea pig, and I'm imagining there's probably snakes and birds and everything else that somebody would have as a pet. Now, do you need to train your volunteers to make sure that they're adequately trained to cover all of those different kinds of pets?
Most of the time we have volunteers. We have volunteers that specifically only want reptiles. That's what they deal with.
They only want reptiles.
Right.
Okay.
They don't do dogs and cats. So if we have reptiles come in, we have volunteers who just want reptiles, or volunteers who would just take birds. So we make sure that everybody does have the knowledge and knows the proper care for these animals.
And so those volunteers that are the foster volunteers are different than the volunteers that are just going in. How does the in-home volunteer process work?
What we do is if we have somebody who has a pet at home, normally an elderly pet or a cat, it's hard to move them into foster care. They don't adjust very well. So normally the homeowner will give us permission. We will go into the home and take the dogs for walks. We try to get there 4 times a day. Clean litter boxes, feed them, whatever we have to do so that they're still in their home environment and they feel safe there and until their owner comes home.
You're listening to Westmoreland Community Connections on Classic Hits 107.1 WHJB and on the web at WHJBFM.com. We're talking with the founder, the president and founder of HOSPAWS, Valerie Hoegel. Valerie and one of her volunteers, Fran Petras. Ladies, walk me through one of an example of how the whole process works, and maybe give me a real life example of what you've done that has impacted a family and has made their life better. Just tell a story.
Okay. There's so many. We had a lady who needed surgery, heart surgery. And she had a dog and 2 cats, and she kept canceling her heart surgery because there were nobody to care for the animals, and she didn't want to do that. So she canceled it, and somebody had led her to us, and we put the animals into foster care, and she had her surgery, and they've all returned to her, and we're still close friends today.
She canceled her heart surgery to make sure that she was taking care of her pets. Obviously, she's an animal lover to the nth degree, right?
Absolutely, she is.
And I would imagine also that your volunteers have to all be animal lovers. How do you you're interacting with these people? Do you see the difference in animal lovers versus people that maybe just are not animal lovers? I mean, are they just more compassionate?
They're very compassionate. All of our volunteers in our foster homes, I know when I put an animal into a foster home, I know that they're going to be cared for and loved like it's their own pets.
Right.
You know, we never put them into a home that it's somebody who says, oh, I kind of like them. No, they have to have that love and want to give that attention to them just like they would their own.
And you said that you are interacting with the hospitals and the elder care facilities. I mean, how does one make that kind of a contact? I mean, are you interacting with the administration or you said the social workers? How do you make those connections?
It is usually the social workers that contact us. Social workers, caseworkers. In some cases, it's just a hospital liaison that would call us and ask for some help for somebody.
Okay, very good. You're listening to Westmoreland Community Connections on Classic Hits 107.1 WHJB and on the web at WHJBFM.com. I'm your host, Chad Amond, president of the Westmoreland County Chamber. We are going to be back right after a short break to talk a little bit more about what HOSPAWS is doing for the community here in Westmoreland County and beyond. Thanks for listening, everyone.
This is Westmoreland Community Connections on Classic Hits 107.1 WHJB. If you have a suggestion for a topic, or if your nonprofit organization would like to be featured on this program, call us during regular business hours at 724-216-1200.
Welcome back. You're listening to Westmoreland Community Connections on WHJB Classic Hits 107.1. I'm your host, Chad Amond, president of the Westmoreland County Chamber of Commerce. We are delighted to have on the show today two guests that are making a huge impact in the community. The first guest is Valerie Hoegel. She is president and founder of HOSPAWS, and Fran Petras is a volunteer with HOSPAWS. Ladies, before we went to the break, we were talking about some of the I don't know, maybe the in-depth stuff of what HOSPAWS does. But I understand that you've been getting some recognition, not just in Westmoreland County, but maybe around southwestern Pennsylvania. I guess you've been on KDKA. I read a story in the Trib not too long ago, and I understand you were on Pittsburgh Today Live. How is it coming that you're starting to be famous, right?
Well, I don't know if it's famous, but Val Hoegel and Kathy Rudder, one of the other board members, went on the Pittsburgh Today live show on July 3rd, and it was an awesome opportunity for us to get the word out to the Pittsburgh area and surrounding communities about HOSPAWS.
Well, Fran, what is the main, when you go on to a show like that, or a show like this, what is the main message that you want to make sure that listeners or viewers are hearing about HOSPAWS?
Well, we want to get out the fact that there is help. We do need foster families to help us. So if anybody out there in the listening area can foster for us, or even do in-home care, or taking a pet into their house, even if they come to an event and help sit at a table, do a fundraiser for us, because we do have needs. We do need collars and maybe leashes and sometimes incidental things that add up.
Do you ever take things like if a family had a dog that had to, that they no longer have the dog, do you take donations? Somebody has a 3/4 of a bag of dog food that it's at home. Do you take that kind of stuff? Oh, yes,
absolutely, because we don't want anything to go to waste.
And where do you operate out of? Val, is that something that is there any sort of a movement forward for you to have a dedicated facility?
Well, we are actually looking for a facility now. We have a GoFundMe account set up that we are using to try to find a facility. Right now, we're kind of operating out of all of our homes. Everybody has stuff there. And we are trying to find a place that when we get a call and it's an emergency call, or somebody's going in right now, that we can pick up an animal and put them somewhere immediately, because sometimes a foster family doesn't always come right away.
You brought up the GoFundMe account idea. Obviously, that is important. But what other aspects do you approach for fundraising?
Well, we do different events. We're having a bingo in November 19th at the Youngwood Fire Hall. We're going to have a bingo event. It's $20. If anybody's interested in coming to bingo, it includes a lunch, and you can give us a call at the 724-787-7304 number and get the tickets there. That's
a bingo event at Youngwood Fire Hall on Sunday, November 19th from 1 to 4. And that's an event that is obviously going to be fun. Are pets welcome?
They do not allow them in the fire hall, unfortunately.
I had to ask. I mean, I'm thinking everyone's going to ask. Well, that's probably a question too that makes some sense. If you have about 40 volunteers, right?
Correct.
These are all people that love pets, and they understand that pets can have an impact on your well-being and maybe relieve your stress and all of that stuff. Well, what happens when a patient goes into the hospital and calls HOSPAWS and says, well, I need somebody to take care of my dog or my cat, but it doesn't interact well with other animals? What happens then?
That makes it a little tough because, like you said, most of the people in our organization, people who volunteer for us, are there because they are pet lovers. So to find families that don't have other pets is very hard to do. So it makes it difficult. Right now, we currently have 2 fosters that don't have other pets, that are pet lovers, but do not currently have other pets of their own. So they're normally full when we call.
You're listening to Westmoreland Community Connections on Classic Hits 107.1 WHJB and on the web at WHJBFM.com. We're talking with the president and founder of HOSPAWS, and that is Valerie Hoegel, and Fran Petras, who is a volunteer with HOSPAWS. Ladies, how many pets, since you kicked off in 2014?
Correct.
How many pets and families have you been able to help over that course of time?
We've already helped over 180 pets to stay with their families, yes.
Wow. That's fantastic. But you're always still looking for volunteers, correct?
Always looking for volunteers. Anybody who has room to foster a pet that could help with the in-home care. These are major things that we really need help with.
You told me a brief story. I want the listeners to hear it because I think that this is probably exactly what HOSPAWS' mission is. Tell the story about the truck driver.
We had an out-of-state truck driver that was delivering locally. He had 2 Chihuahuas in his truck. He got very sick when he got to his destination and was taken to the hospital by ambulance. Somebody had seen the dogs in the truck, didn't know they were there right away, and had called animal control. And somebody at the organization itself, the business that they were delivering to, had realized that the dogs were in the truck also and called us. So we had to go to where the truck was parked. They let us in. We got the 2 dogs out of the truck. They were in foster care. And the truck driver would call every day while he was in the hospital. We weren't allowed to take the dogs in, but he really wanted to see his dogs and know they were okay.
Sure.
So he had us take them up, and we would stand in the parking lot at the hospital and put him on speakerphone, and he would look out his window and talk to his dogs on speakerphone so that they knew that he was there and he could see that they were safe.
So he was still able to interact. Did they end up? I mean, I don't know if I want to ask this question. Did they end up making a connection? He got out of the hospital and
he did. Okay. 3 or 4 days he was in the hospital, but we made a trip every single day. We took the dogs up to the hospital and stood in the parking lot for him so that he could see them.
Okay, so
he didn't want them
ending
to think that they abandoned him.
Oh, very good. We'll talk a little bit for a brief moment about what other events you attend. What other events? How do you spread the word? I mean, other than being on some radio stations and some viewer stations, how do you make sure that you're getting the word out there?
Mainly, it is by word of mouth. A lot of people on Facebook. It has done amazing things for us by getting the word out about HOSPAWS. We have talked to the state police, so they're aware. We've been called to assist with, cases that they've come across. We have worked with all the local hospitals, and word travels fast. Once they find out that there's something out there, word travels very fast.
So is there a busier time of year? We're coming into late fall. Is it going to be busier, or is it going to slow down, or how does that work?
We do seem to get a little busier around the holidays. And then it's very hard to find fosters because you've got a lot of people going out of town, and just finding foster homes in general is tough.
Well, ladies, thank you very much for being on Westmoreland Community Connections. Valerie Hoegel, president and founder of HOSPAWS, Fran Petras, volunteer with HOSPAWS. You're making a difference in our community, and we appreciate it very much. For those listeners that would like to learn more about HOSPAWS, you can give them a call at 724-787-7304, or search them on Facebook at HOSPAWS, HOSPAWS, and you'll be able to make that connection. If there's any listeners out there that are looking to volunteer or to be a foster for the pets, or to be an in-home visitor, I'm sure these ladies would be glad to have you. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Westmoreland Community Connections on Classic Hits 107.1 WHJB and on the web at WHJBFM.com. Join us next week, same time, same place, for another edition of Westmoreland Community Connections.
This has been Westmoreland Community Connections, a look at issues and happenings in and around Westmoreland County. Join us again next week on Classic Hits 107.1 WHJB.